Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 3 on DraftKings, and I'm going to be here taking questions from my chat on Twitch for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so, answering all the questions that they can give me that they have to help them build tournament lineups, cash game lineups on DraftKings, on FanDuel, wherever they're playing this weekend. We like to stay 30,000 feet for most of the week, Monday through Friday. Friday, we start coming in for a landing. Sunday morning on Twitch, the last 45 minutes before lock, I'm live. Last 45 minutes before kickoff, I'm live taking very specific granular questions like this guy or that guy, these two versus these two. So we're kind of trying to zero in every single Friday and talk about as much as we possibly can on this show. If you're new to the channel, thank you for coming. Subscribe to the channel, drop a, ring that notifications bell so you can be notified every time I come out with one of the 8 videos that I come out with on this first channel per week. And also, you guys have been outstanding liking the videos recently. I'm going to try and set a new standard. Instead of asking, I want X amount of likes on this video. Let's see if we can get 500. Let's see if we can get 1,000. Let's see if we can get 1,500. Let's see if we can try to stay at about a 10% rate. So if there are 20,000 views on this video, we should probably end the week with 2,000 likes on this video by the time it kicks off. There's 10,000 views on the video, 1,000 likes. So it's up to you. Don't let me down. You guys have been outstanding so far. Let's keep it up. So 10%. That's what we're looking for. This video on Friday is brought to you by EstablishTheRun.com. You can use promo code SMIZLife at checkout. There is a link right down below. It's going to be in the pinned comment. Kind of like The Athletic in terms of daily fantasy sports during the season. Evan Silva's matchups every single week. Brandon Thorne's D-line, O-line mismatches, buy, sell, Levitan's cheap volume. Whole lot of great content for you, as well as projections for both DraftKings and FanDuel. Go over, check them out. They have great podcasts as well that's not behind the paywall if you wanted to listen to them, as well as some paywalled podcasts too if you become a sub. So go check out Establish the Run. They support the stream. They support the YouTube channel. Go support them as well if you wanted to help out. So let's bring in chat. Let's bring some questions to the table. Chat going off. ETR is legit. Kittle officially out. Interesting. I think that's a good place to start the show. 2 weeks ago, so week 1, Jordan Reed was not a thing and played 10 snaps. Week 2, Jordan Reed played 27 snaps and had completely unsustainable targets and touchdowns based on the amount of routes that he run on those 27 snaps. He ran like 18 routes and was, he was blocking 60. He ran routes on 60% of the drop back. It was bad. And he got like 8 targets and 2 touchdowns. That's completely unsustainable. Now we have a week where everybody's going to jump back on him. It's entirely possible he may play 35 to 40 snaps this week, right? That's a thing that could happen. They could ramp him up as the season goes along. I still don't expect him to play 100% of the snaps. I don't expect him to run routes on 80% of their quarterbacks' dropbacks. And now his price has gone up. The percent of people that are going to be on him have gone up. I don't think that we need him at tight end. If you want to sprinkle him into tournaments this week, fine. I think there are much better plays. Thoughts on Devin Singletary with Zach Moss expected to be out this week? I mean, Mike, I want to do the Socratic method and bounce this back at you, chat. Do you need Devin Singletary this week? Right? Is he something that we need to go to? Is that a thing? Like looking at running back, you have Ezekiel Elliott, who I don't think is going to carry a high percentage this week. You have Derrick Henry, who I also don't think is going to carry a really large high percentage on DraftKings this week. I think he'll be higher on FanDuel because FanDuel is 10 to 15% softer on salaries than DK is. So like, I think we're going to see most of the people. I think you'll see a sprinkle of Dalvin Cook. Josh Jacobs, we don't know if he's going to play or not. Didn't practice yesterday on Thursday, and we don't know about Friday's practice report yet. If he doesn't practice today, the alarm bells should be going off. Then you have all these guys. Austin Eckler. You have Connor, who I think is in a good spot. Carson is a great leverage play this week. Miles Sanders, probably the highest rostered player in tournaments this weekend, especially in cash games. Didn't mention Jonathan Taylor, who I think will be the second highest rostered player this week. Those two probably in cash games will be 80+% owned each. Why do we need Singletary? Right? I understand why you want to play him. Right? So like Moss is out, so Singletary is going to get more volume. That's true. He should theoretically get more volume. But you got a quarterback that takes touchdowns away once they get inside the 5-yard line. I think he is a viable tournament play. It's Friday. Things can change by Sunday, obviously. I'm 99% sure that I am not going to be having shares of Devin Singletary in my cash game lineups this week. I don't believe that he is necessary. I don't think that he is needed. And if you want to sprinkle him in, if you think that this Buffalo Rams game is a sneaky shootout and you think there's a possibility that Devin Singletary can get you 20 to 25 DraftKings points or 20 plus DraftKings points for 5K, I'm not going to tell you not to do that in tournaments, and it won't be difficult to overweight him either. I do want to take a second to say, I said this last week on a close-up. I'm going to say it again this week. I will not be correct on 100% of the things that I answer. If somebody asks me a question, I am going to give you my opinion based on the 60 to 80 hours of work that I am going to put into NFL Week 3. Some of those things will not be correct. I'm going to be wrong on stuff, guys. Okay? It is the way that it is. So don't come back on Sunday afternoon and say, you were wrong about this one thing, when you spent an entire hour taking questions from a chat and talking about 4,000 different things, but you were wrong about this one. Give it a break. Thoughts on Darius Slayton? He's really popping in a lot of different projections that I've been looking at, and he's not going to be difficult to overweight the field on either, because I think that people are going to be on different plays than him. If you subtract players from that Giants passing game, right? And I think that we are already doing that. So let's take a look again. We are already subtracting players from that passing game by removing Saquon Barkley and his massive target share. Dion Lewis is solid. Gallman's a good pass catcher. Freeman, meh, right? But like, I don't think any of these guys that are left at running back are really going to garner the 15+% market share of targets that Saquon Barkley did. So that's 5% more that goes to the wide receivers and tight ends. You also have now Sterling Shepard and his 15% plus to 20% of the market share are gone. So Slayton and Tate should see an uptick. And Slayton is the bigger play guy. He is the more downfield guy, and also good at the short and intermediate routes. I think you can overweight him without getting out of control. I don't think you need 40% of him in tournaments, but he is somebody that I think you should be overweight on in tournaments. And I think he's borderline cash game viable, but again, not sure that he's necessary because of the game environment here. So you have players in this price range like Slayton, right? At wide receiver, 4,900. Let's go up 500 and down 500, right? Just arbitrarily. Up 5 and down 5. Up 6 is Michael Gallup. Seattle has given up the most catches in the league to opposing wide receivers. They've given up more deep catches to opposing wide receivers than any other team through 2 weeks. Michael Gallup is once again in play. You have Deontay Johnson at 5,400, leading the league in targets. You have CeeDee Lamb getting the easy targets out of the slot and has big playability, again, against that Seattle defense in Dallas with one of the highest team totals on the week. You want to shoot for the moon in tournaments? Deshaun Jackson, now minus Jalen Reagor, is going to see a ton of air yards, as he always does. At some point, he is going to cash in once, if not twice, in a week. Difficult to predict exactly which week that's going to happen, but it will happen at some point. Looking at some other guys here. Corey Davis, no. Gage, somebody I'm not really high on, but if Julio Jones, who right now looks like he's going to be a game time decision on Sunday, is out with his 25+% of market share now disappearing, Russell Gage becomes a 95+% of the snaps guy, and Atlanta has to throw it 40+ times a game to win, so his targets go way up. And then you got Darius Slayton, Like there's too many guys and you can't play all of them in cash. And I think that a few of these gentlemen are probably more cash game viable, which is why I say you're not going to use Slayton in those lineups. I think that you're going to prioritize guys like Johnson at a similar price point, not 10% more expensive, or not Djax, or somebody like CD Lamb, who's 500 higher. I think those two guys are more cash game viable, but Slayton is a borderline cash game viable guy and obviously viable for tournaments as well. You plug Djax into one of your line. Look, man, Djax we know what he can do, right? It just takes one. If you asked who are the players that are most likely to catch an 80-yard touchdown this week, he's got to be on that list. If you made a list of 5 players who could catch, let's say, a 65+ yard touchdown this week, he's got to be in the top 5, right? And I don't care to order it, right? There's no need. But like, you're talking about guys like, without any order here off the top of my head, Michael Gallup, you're talking about Djax, you're talking about DK Metcalf, guys who have KJ Hamler. You're talking about everybody like that. Thoughts on Nikhil Harry for cash? That's okay. So he's a very easy target point and was especially early in the week at 4,200 on DraftKings, which is too cheap for his role in this offense. But I think there's warts that we have to discuss. And those warts that we have to discuss about Nikhil Harry aren't really a problem with Nikhil Harry or his game or his talent or even that price point. My issue is when the Patriots are going to play from ahead, and let's just take a look at where the sportsbook have them right now. The Patriots right now are a 6-point favorite at home, and the Raiders are having injury issues, again, playing on a short week, traveling across the country to play in New England in an early game. Josh Jacobs, the engine to that offense, might not play. Darren Waller on the injury report, have to wait for Friday practice reports. Very possible he might not play. We're expecting New England to play from ahead here. In the games where New England has played from ahead, week 1, he got 6 targets. Week 2, they were chasing. This is I don't expect 10 plus targets for Nikhil Harry. I think this is more reasonable right here in a game that they expect to play from ahead, mostly because Cam Newton, when they play from ahead, is not going to throw the ball a ton. That's just not going to be what they do. Threw the ball 19 times in week 1 in a game that they won by 10. He's going to run it 10 to 13 times. They're going to hand the ball off to one of their 3 running backs. They'll probably run it, if they are ahead, 40 times this week. And they will deflate the ball, and they are going to, no joke intended there. They're going to play very slow. Honestly, that was off the cuff. I did not mean to do that. And they're not going to run a lot of plays, and they're not going to have to pass a ton. So 6 targets, more in the realm of possibility for Nikhil Harry, who I think is a good player and a value at that price. Because if he misses, he's not going to miss by much, right? If you get 7 points out of a 4K player, that's not going to kill you. It's not. If you get 7 points from a 7K player, that's going to sink your lineup. So I'm way more lenient on the low-priced guys than I am the high-priced guys when it comes to values, especially for cash games. So that's why I like this show, because we can get more into the long form questions on this Q&A to try and help you guys think about how you should be making lineups. And the important thing there, again, take the names out of it, right? We've talked about this before. I use Johnny Widget a lot. So if I told you that Johnny Widget was 4,200 and probably going to get 6 or 7 targets, would you play him? You're like, well, maybe. Thoughts on KJ Hamler now? I think that he is very similar to Nikhil Harry, but a really fast version. Nikhil Harry's not, he's a 6'4" wide receiver. He's a big body guy. He's not a DK Metcalf 6'4" guy who runs like a 4.25 or 4.3. So you're not playing him in that manner. So The difference is KJ Hamler is that guy. Jerry Jeudy's banged up. Cortland Sutton's gone. He's going to play 85+% of the snaps. He got 7 targets last week and 107 air yards, something along those lines. Plays with a quarterback now in Driscoll. Yeah, but Driscoll, Al. But you know what? Driscoll's somebody who spreads targets around and does not just zero in on one guy. So all of his guys get usage. He's going to throw the ball 30+ times, in my opinion, this weekend. If he throws it 30+ times and Hamler has 15 to 17% of that market share, that's like 5-6 targets. He catches 3 of those for 40 yards. That's 7 points at $3K on DraftKings. The difference is you have the possibility, if he catches 3 balls, that one of them is going to be a 60-yarder, because that is his game. Whether it's a short pass that he turns upfield or whether he gets behind the defense and Driscoll finds him on a 45 air yard pass. So that's the massive difference for me. He has got a high enough floor at 3K to not bother me in cash games or tournaments, and he has the ability to take the ceiling off, which you don't need. Somebody asked, is Eckler too risky in cash games? I don't think he's too risky in cash games. Bridgewater in cash, I don't think you need it. I think, look, based on the standard build, we typically look at paying down at quarterback. Something around the low 6K range, right? This is where we end up on DraftKings. The old days, we used to be able to find guys that were 5,000 to 5,500. We could lock in 17 to 22 points from that guy and roll. The difference now, this week, this is week 3 specific. This is not an every week thing. I'm always going to look for the lower price guy. Last week, I thought Dak Prescott was a better play than Kyler Murray in terms of raw projection. But Kyler Murray was 700 cheaper, so Kyler Murray was my cash game quarterback, right? You're looking to squeeze as much value as you can into your cash game. The difference this week than other weeks, and the reason we usually look for that at quarterbacks, is because the band of scoring at quarterbacks is much thinner than the band of scoring at other positions. But whether it's the Lamar Jackson effect, where everybody with mobile quarterbacks now is saying, you know what, why aren't we running these guys 10 times a week? That now you've got Kyler Murray rushing 10+ times a week. You've got Cam Newton rushing 10+ times a week instead of like 4, 5, 6 like he did on Carolina when he was this great rushing threat. They're like, you know what? We got this guy. Why don't we just pick up yards, or we can pick up yards and deal with the repercussions later. You have Josh Allen. You have all these guys that have this massive floor based on their rushing yards. And again, like I said, this week, you don't need to pay a lot to get 20 touch running backs. You really don't. And these two are going to be really, really highly owned. So in cash games, you can afford more for a quarterback than you could before. So paying for guys like Russ or Dak or Kyler or Josh Allen or Cam Newton at these elevated prices is much more viable in week 3 than it ever really was before. So based on the pricing and the way that standard lineup building is going this week, I don't think you need to come all the way down here, right? I think Bridgewater's fine for tournaments if you think that they're going to be behind. Obviously, you guys know I like DJ Moore. They have other great weapons in that pass game, like Robbie Anderson. I think that Curtis Samuel is going to be way more involved without Christian McCaffrey there. They have pass catching backs as well. Mike Davis, not really an amazing pass catching back, but he caught a lot of balls in the fourth quarter last week, so at least he's usable in that situation. I'm hoping that Curtis Samuel gets some run at running back and gets utilized more. And if he can get into the end zone once or twice, great. But like, you don't really have a really high touchdown floor here. He's thrown 1 touchdown pass in the first 2 weeks of the season. And it's not like the Chargers defense is bad. So I think there are safer routes for us to get 20+ points out of our quarterback than Bridgewater. I do like Bridgewater in tournaments for all those reasons that I just mentioned, but the variance between his floor and his ceiling is way too wide for me to want to put him in a cash game this week where I don't need the savings. If the salaries were really tight and we were struggling to get cash to pay for guys, fine, but I don't think that that's our situation this week. Thoughts on Mike Davis to fit in Nook Hopkins? I don't know that I would go that route personally. I try to look, the basic philosophy behind playing running backs and try to work this into your cash game lineups as much as humanly possible, you want home favored running backs who project to get over 20 touches, the majority of the work inside the 5-yard line, and will have usage in the passing game. Just use that as a checklist for all the different running backs on the slate. And if they check off multiple boxes, even better. So guys in this range: Derrick Henry, inside the 5, yes. 20 plus touches, yes. Playing at home, no. Favored, yes. Involved in the pass game, no, not really. We would hope that he would, but no. Taylor, home, yes. Favored, yes. 20 plus touches expected, yes. Really bad defense, yes. Inside the 5 carries, yes. Like, involved in the passing game, yes. Like, just do that. Keep it as simple as possible for yourself when you're trying to build cash game lineups. Cut out all the noise, focus on the actual signal, right? And the signal for running backs is all those different things. When you're building cash game lineups, do that. You want to galaxy brain a tournament? Go galaxy brain in a tournament. You want to play cash games? You need to switch off the 4D chess mode in your head and not try to outthink everybody. Just make the right move. How do I decide which entry to use in single entry tournament? I don't. Like, I would build a tournament lineup. So like on the Fantasy Focus podcast at ESPN, also known as the 06010 podcast, I have to say that because people are asking constantly in the replies, where do I find the podcast that you're on? Fantasy Focus. The Matthew Berry one, that one, every Thursday, me, Mike Clay, and Daniel Dobb do a DFS-centric podcast on the Fantasy Focus feed. It's already up for this week. Go check it out. I take a look at specifically building a tournament lineup on that show every single week. Don't copy paste the lineup, but do copy paste the philosophy behind that lineup into your brain for you to build your own lineups every single week. I also do that same philosophy every Tuesday here on YouTube on the FanDuel First Look video. So go watch that video. That's the philosophy, right? And the standard philosophy is quarterback with a stacked pass catcher on his team. Don't play a running back from that stack. Bring it back with at least one player on the opposing team. Have a secondary stack with a running back, wide receiver, and tight end from 2 opposing teams that you think might shoot out. It's easier to be right about 2 things than it is about 5 or 6 things, right? And then squeeze in your best, point per dollar plays at the rest of the positions. Dink in trouble with Doyle up this week? Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I like QBs at 15%. Which QB, not Dak, Russ, Kyler, do I think will be highest? I don't. Okay. I don't say that my philosophy of making plays or lineups or whatever is right, but it works for me. There are people who will play 2 quarterbacks across 150 lineups or whatever you're going to build, right? If you're building 3 or 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 or 150, there are people that will focus on very few quarterbacks, and there are people that will make 20 lineups and have 10 quarterbacks, right? I don't have the right answer, but my answer is mostly based on the fact that I want to focus on quarterbacks that I think have a realistic shot at 6K or above of getting me 25 plus DraftKings points. I am only playing the quarterbacks because if they have those days, their wide receivers and pass catchers are probably going to have a great day also, which probably means that somebody in the other team is going to have a great play also, which means that I can then utilize that to try and get to the top of a tournament. So quarterbacks are a tool to get into the lineup. I don't make my lineups that are quarterback centric. I focus on running backs and wide receivers and tight ends who can get me the most volume. But for tournaments, I want to focus on guys that can, get you 25 plus points. So for me, I like to pick 8 or 10 quarterbacks for my 150 lineups, and I want to have those guys stacked in a bunch of different ways with pass catchers and bringbacks. Best D value. You think the Giants versus banged up San Francisco offense, it's supposedly sketchy turf. Okay, the turf isn't going to affect the defense. So take that out of the equation. I kind of feel like under 3K, I think the Eagles are a good enough defense against a rookie quarterback without a fantastic offensive line. I think that the Texans defense against Pittsburgh, you know that Ben Roethlisberger holds on to the ball way too long and is going to throw it predictably a lot of times, so could take sacks, and they do have a defensive line that can get pressure if you want to go uber cheap. Same thing, not going to use the Jets in that situation. Probably not going to use the Panthers either. I know that some people like the Jets defense. They've got a really terrible O-line defensive line matchup this week. They have gotten 3 sacks in each of the first 3 games. And again, it's 2K. If you have to squeeze them in, fine. And maybe they can get Phillip Rivers is prone to throwing interceptions to some degree, and maybe they get a pick 6 and just totally save you. So those would be the cheaper defenses that I think would be all right. But like the one that's going to be really low percentage in tournaments is the Colts D, because it's very restrictive to get them at 4,100. Best O-line D-line matchup based on this article here. Thorne's biggest D-line O-line mismatches on the week over at ETR. Go check them out. They should be able to get pressure on a Jets offense that has no tools remaining for Sam Darnold to throw to. Sam Darnold does take a lot of sacks. Sam Darnold does throw a lot of interceptions. They are playing on the road. This Colts defense could wreck things. And if you're playing Jonathan Taylor in a tournament, the correlation between the Colts defense, or the Colts being up big and Taylor getting a lot of rushes, and the Colts defense being on the field against a Jets team that should have to drop back 30 plus times without any offensive weapons, is a pretty scary combination. Safest defense, I don't know if there is such a thing as safest defense. But here's the thing. When you're picking defenses, don't pick teams that you think are playing against somebody that can't score. I think that's the wrong philosophy. You want to pick a defense that's going to go up against a team that's going to drop back a lot, right? The Kansas City Chiefs defense, from a metrics perspective, has not been good for the last 2 years. They're not a good defense. Collectively, they give up a lot of yards. They give up a lot of points. They do a lot of things bad defensively, from yards per game, rush yards per game, pass yards per game, touchdowns allowed, efficiency in the red zone, all that sort of thing. But you know what they do? They force teams to drop back 45 plus times a game. And so they get a lot of sacks. And so the past 2 years, Kansas City's defense, with all those bad yards per game, touchdowns per game, efficiency in the red zone metrics, and opponent scoring, have been a top 5 fantasy defense the last 2 seasons. Am I still in the same game stacks? I mean, I'm pretty transparent. Like, play the good players on the teams that you think will score a lot of touchdowns. I try to keep things as simple as possible. Like, I'm a smart dude, but I'm not like an MIT graduate. There's tons of people that are way smarter than me. There's tons of people that understand math at a way higher level than me. But I don't think you need to galaxy brain this stuff. The game isn't solved, right? DFS isn't solved. But like, if you think about it this way, this is the Vegas tab at Fantasy Labs. This is in front of the paywall. So anybody can go to fantasylabs.com and check this out. There's a link in the description down below if you wanted to sign up for a 10% discount at Fantasy Labs. Go check that out as well. If you wanted to use their optimizer, their projections. But do you want to focus on teams that are expected to score multiple players from a team that's expected to score like 18.5 points this weekend? Or do you want to focus on players from teams that are expected to score 28 plus points this weekend? 30 plus points this weekend. 30 plus points this weekend. Do you want to focus on stacks and bringbacks from a game where there's 43 total points expected, or games where there's 56 total points expected? Right? So the philosophy is very simple. Play the high volume players in the best high scoring environments, because those players tend to get more catches, they play more plays, they score more touchdowns, and therefore are better for your fantasy teams than other players. Now, obviously, that's figured out already, right? I'm not giving you any people are like, oh, I got to take notes on it. No, there's no trade secret, right? That's pretty straightforward and obvious. Where you can really differentiate is finding plays from the games that, especially on a week like this, where all these totals are flying, right? They're all flying upward. Up 2, up 1 since open, up 1, up 3 since open. Focusing on plays from these games where the total is like between 45 and 49. And finding stacks and bringbacks from those games where you can think, okay, this is going to be a game where maybe they're not expecting a lot of scoring, but it's a really fast-paced game, right? Two teams that run a lot of plays, two teams that don't bleed clock. One of those teams is Arizona. Another one of those teams is Dallas. Runs a lot of plays. And they've said they're not going to slow down. So teams that are going to play against them and play up in pace, you want to focus on teams that are playing up in pace, as opposed to teams that are going to play very slow. Like I believe the Patriots will predictably play very slow if they have a lead. And the Raiders, if the game is within 10 points and Josh Jacobs is healthy, are going to run it 30 plus times, which means the more you run it, the slower the game pace is going to be. So focus on fast-paced games, high-scoring environments. You normally limit one running back from one team. Is Eckler and Kelly okay in the same lineup? In a tournament, I think you could be okay with that, considering how many times they run it when they're playing from ahead. Added to the fact of how bad Carolina's defense is against opposing running backs, I don't expect Joshua Kelly to get 27 touches this week. I think that Eckler will out-touch him when you add up his catches and runs. The threat is, what if Eckler has one touchdown, Kelly also has one touchdown? That's within the realm of possibilities here, right? And Eckler has 22 touches and Kelly has 19. Right? They got the lead against Kansas City and they ran it 7,000 times. And I don't think that if they get a lead here against a team that has allowed 3 or more touchdowns for the past 14 games that they've played, and this year is worse than they were last year, that you can't also, you can't play Eckler. I think you can play Eckler and his 20 touches both weeks in the hopes that he gets a touchdown here against Carolina. Touchdown expectation much higher this week for Eckler than either of the previous 2 weeks, on the road against Cincinnati and against Kansas City, as well as temper your expectations on his touch count. Don't expect 25 again. Expect it to be somewhere between 13 and 18 for Joshua Kelly. But if you can get 16, 17 touches out of Kelly and 22 out of Austin Eckler, which if they're playing with a 7-point lead and they're playing against a really soft defense, yeah, both can pay off in a tournament. But the question you have to ask, the most important question, we've spoken about this before. What percent of lineups do you think will roster both Kelly and Eckler in whatever tournament you're playing? Secondary question that you must add on top of that, once you've tried to figure that part out, now you must ask yourself, what percent of the time will Eckler and Kelly both reach the points per game that I need from them collectively for this to pay off? And if the second number is higher than the first number, then it's worth playing in tournaments at a specific leverage point. But if it's not, then don't. We spoke yesterday about the amount of times somebody asked, are you going to play running backs in your quarterback stacks? And we spoke about this yesterday, and Kyle from ESPN, Kyle Soppy, Thirsty Kyle, for those of you who listen to the Fantasy Focus, I had him dig up the stats. Over the last 5 years, there have been 25 occasions where a quarterback, running back, and pass catcher have all combined for 25 plus DraftKings points. There have been 2,600 plus games over that span in the NFL. So, not highly likely. And they're all the predictable ones. You know, it was like Cam, CMC, Greg Olsen. It was Kareem Hunt, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill. It was Michael Thomas, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara. It was Lev Bell. It was the Killer Bees. Roethlisberger, Lev Bell, Antonio Brown. And multiple times for each one of them. Second largest total is Detroit, Arizona, but not much talk on Detroit players. Any thoughts? Yeah, play some. I'm not going to play the running backs. If the running backs score for Detroit, then, you know, F's in the chat for me. But like, obviously, if I'm playing Arizona stacks, I'm going to have some bring back players. Kenny Galladay's back. Marvin Jones Jr., TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson ripped this team up last year. Go look at the week 1 box score from 2019, what TJ Hawkinson did to Arizona. And I know it's been a year, and I know it's a different team. And I'm not expecting the same stat line from him. But teams are still peppering targets to tight ends against Arizona. What are the top 3 highest game totals this week? Yeah, let's go take a look. Go look at the Fantasy Labs Vegas dashboard. On the slate, because obviously Kansas City, Baltimore doesn't count, and neither does Green Bay and New Orleans. But Seattle and Dallas, number 1 at 56.5 points. 56. Anything over 51 is really high in the NFL. Like very, very high. You rarely see 55 plus totals. We have 2 of them on this slate. 56.5 for this game. 55 for the Cardinals against Detroit. And Pat Thorman, one of the other writers at ETR. Crazy stat line from Evan Silva's write-up on Cardinals versus the Lions. Murray has thrown 19 of his 22 career touchdown passes and scored 6 of his 7 rushing touchdowns on non-blitzed plays. 6 stat, right? Great insight there. Sports Info Solutions, and Evan just tears through everything. Detroit's blitz rate has ranked 2nd lowest, 3rd lowest, and 9th lowest in the 3 years under Matt Patricia in the league. This was my reply. So yeah, get guys from that game. Other high totals, 49.5 here for Minnesota against Tennessee. 47 for Raiders and Patriots. 45 for Browns, but these are really high spread games. -6, -7. So you can look at that, or you can look at the individual team totals. Browns expected to play to score 26.5. Titans 26, 23, right? So like, there's a lot of high totaled games on this slate, and a lot of the totals are moving upwards, which is peculiar. And this is one we talked about yesterday. This game hadn't moved. Remember, it was 95 to 5, and the total hadn't moved. It's up 1.5 since yesterday now. The total had not moved since open. It was 46. It was 46 yesterday. Today, this total has moved up in the last 24 hours, 1.5 points. Thoughts on multiple Jets players for leverage? You'll hang up and listen. Like Berrios and Herndon? What? What are we doing? Frostbite. Why though? So Stafford's arm will be falling off. Stafford could throw 45 plus times this week. Look, if you want to play a Jets player for value this week, go ahead, play a Jets player for value this week. I'm probably not going to play multiple Jets in a lineup that doesn't have Sam Darnold at quarterback. And I'm probably not going to have Sam Darnold at quarterback or Chris Hogan, right? Fant or Jonnu? You know, I don't know. And again, I think it's fine to say I don't know. I don't need to take a stance on everything. Like, Jonnu is essentially the same price as Hawkinson. Fant, essentially the same price as Hawkinson. Hawkinson's in the best game environment. Tampa Bay is good defensively. If Judy's there, I think that Fant will get around 20% of the targets from a quarterback that will throw the ball to his tight end. Jonnu Smith, good offensive environment. We have to see if A.J. Brown is out. Obviously, a totally different situation for him from a target percentage perspective. If A.J. Brown is playing or if A.J. Brown is not playing. And it looks like A.J. Brown is going to play this weekend. So this is a wait and see for me. He's got great usage inside the red zone. He's been solid in terms of routes run. We know how electric an athlete he is. And Tannehill is an extremely efficient quarterback now that he is not playing for Coach Gase. Minnesota is bad. Tennessee is going to give the ball to Henry a billion times. Well, yes. But they're not only going to give the ball to Henry. Like other play, it's not going to be 45 Henry runs and 0 pass attempts. So there's a likelihood that other players will get involved. Isn't Logan Thomas way too cheap for Cleveland that he gets on FanDuel? Yeah. I totally agree. Let's look at cheap tight ends on FanDuel. I mean, you can say let's look at cheap everything on FanDuel. FanDuel's free. Everybody's free this week. So Dallas, Jordan Reed, 5,300. I'm probably not going there. Dallas Goedert has been outstanding, and now they've got no good wide receivers outside of Djax, and Djax is not a possession guy. He's a stretch the field guy, which leaves Ertz and Goddard, pardon me, as the two guys that are going to get a ton of targets. Goddard getting 17 through 2 weeks. Sure. Chris Herndon, if y'all want to go back to that, well, go for it. They're going to be playing from behind. They have nobody else to throw to. But again, Adam Gase is the coach. Mo Alley Cox, in the case that Doyle misses this game, you guys know what I think about Mo Alley Cox. Great athlete, massive human being. Last week was somewhat of an anomaly to me. He got 6 targets, 5 receptions, 111 yards. Did not run a lot of routes per dropbacks. Did not play a lot of snaps last week. But every time he ran a route, he was pretty much targeted. That's not sustainable. But yeah, Logan Thomas is 4,900 against one of the worst defenses against opposing tight ends and has 17 targets through 2 weeks and is 4,900. It's like you do whatever you want on FanDuel. We built that lineup on FanDuel First Look this week. Again, if you want to go back and watch that video. Every week when one site looks cheaper than the other because they have the exact same roster construction, right? To a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, flex, defense. Chat likes to go plug in the lineup from one side onto the other. So the lineup that I put on FanDuel this week is $6,500 more than the cap allows on DraftKings. So FanDuel is soft, squeezably soft this week. Adam Humphries, good pivot off Hamler, 900 difference. Humphries has a higher floor. Hamler has a 25 to 30 point ceiling that I don't think Adam Humphries has. Adam Humphries maybe has an 18 point ceiling. Maybe. Right? Like, I'm not saying Adam Humphries will never catch a 60-yard touchdown, but it's not a high likelihood of his potential outcomes. You know, where if KJ Hamler steps on the field, he's got a much higher possibility of catching a 40-plus yard pass on a day than Humphries has. Any day that both of them take the field. Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller are back at practice today for the Raiders. Good. I want them to play. The more that they play, the more likely it is that Cam is gotta do stuff. Right? The Raiders' offense is good. It's much better than it was before. The addition of Ruggs, the maturation of Darren Waller in his second year, the expansion of Josh Jacobs in the passing game this year have all made the Raiders' offense way better than it was in the past. Which is something that we're going to need, because if they can't muster more than 16 or 17 points this weekend, then the Patriots are going to run the ball 45 times. We want the Patriots to run the ball 30 times, with 10 of those being by Cam, and Cam throwing it 25 to 35 times. That's what you want if you're rostering Cam Newton. Do I think David Johnson is in play on DraftKings? Feel like you got to play him to play the wide receiver? Why do you have to play him? There's so much value. I'm confused. I don't think you have to play. Like, there's so many value guys at running back. Like, why are we locked into one guy? If the pricing is really tight, that's when we get locked into one value guy. Taylor is $7K. You can get 3 running back. Taylor is that price. Eckler is 68. Connor is 67. At home, favored against a Houston defense that gives up 52% of the yards against them, or to opposing running backs. Chris Carson, you're not going to use him in that lineup. It's a leverage play against the Russ stuff. Miles Sanders is going to be in everybody's lineup, under 7K. Leonard Fournette against Denver, if you want to go that route, that'll be very contrarian. Gordon, still no Lindsey there, so he's going to get a lot of touches at 5,800, averaging 16.5 a game. Last week, 16.5 a game for 6K, more than enough. David Johnson's 54, but like, I don't see why we're locked into that. There's so many value plays this week at running back. There's so many. They're literally everywhere. We talked about Devin Singletary before at 4,900. Jerick McKinnon, who I don't think is going to lead the team in touches for San Francisco this weekend because the presence of Jeff Wilson. But at 4,900, with what he can do in the passing game and how explosive he has looked in the first couple of games, and less running backs there, right? Top 2 guys are injured, so there's not many guys that they can go to. If Wilson gets 16 touches and McKinnon gets 12, I don't know. I don't know why we're focused on just that one guy, I guess is the question. I think there's a million routes that you can go, and it's not difficult to fit those while stacking Dallas. You can do whatever you want this week. You can fit pretty much everything. What Cleveland player do you pair with Lord Thomas III? I'm fine with him as a standalone. If you want to play somebody from Cleveland, again, home favored, play one of the running backs, right? If you want to pair them with that, if you wanted to use this as a secondary stack, I'm probably going to go with Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb in those specific lineups as a secondary stack, right? If they get ahead and they are projected to play from ahead and they are at home, Nick Chubb should see 20-plus touches and the majority of the goal line work. Kareem Hunt won't see as many touches, 12 touches in week 2, 17 touches in week 1. He's going to fall in that range most weeks. Less than 15 touches expected every single week from Kareem Hunt. Unless Nick Chubb is out, then all bets are off. We're stuffing Kareem Hunt when they're home and favored. But one of those two would be my bring back for him. Gage or McKinnon? Gage, we're in a holding pattern on Gage. Okay? Gage, to me, is not somebody I'm going to play this week outside of stacks in that game. Like, I'm not going to play him as an independent player. But that will change. My opinion on that will change if Julio Jones is out. If Julio Jones is out, then yeah, we're probably going to have a lot more Gage. Outside of Matt Ryan lineups, outside of opposing stack lineups. You're very unsure about this week during first look. You made you feel pretty good. look, if you're building a cash game lineup for double ups, triple ups, 50-50s, head-to-heads, okay? And you can't reasonably say that your 3 running backs have 65 or more touches projected for them, and you're not projecting your 3 wide receivers to get 25 or more targets, you're doing cash games wrong in week 3. Especially on FanDuel. Again, FanDuel, you could fit anything you want. If you're not getting 70 touches out of your 3 running backs in cash on FanDuel, you're gonna lose more often than you're gonna win. Like, you know what? You might win, right? I can't say you're gonna lose. I didn't get that and I won. No. You're gonna have, like, if you're projecting 50 touches from your running backs in cash on FanDuel this week because you're getting too cute and galaxy braining your cash game lineup, you probably have about a 10% chance to be a winner this week. Who do I think will be the 3rd highest owned running back in cash, not named Sanders or Taylor? Probably Drake. On FanDuel, probably Henry, because you could fit him. We already talked about Reed. I think he's worth a tournament sprinkle, but I'm not playing him in cash. But even at a tournament sprinkle, I think his percentage is going to go. He's a perfect fade play for me this week. With the price and the percentage both going up, that's when you want to get off the train. You want to get on the train when the player is not performing as well and the price is going in the opposite direction. You want to play somebody who people aren't going to play, whose price is down. Right? You want to get in early. You don't want to get in late. It's late to get in on Reed. And Fantasy Labs actually did a lot of data on this in previous years, like with their trends. As players trend a specific direction with their salary and with their scoring. So like week 1, he was 3K. Nobody played him. They dropped his price to 2,600 and he played a ton. And now his price shot way up from $1,400 from 2,600 to 4,000. And guess what? The percent in tournaments on him is also going to go up. As price and percentage go up, player expectation goes down. Your leverage on that player goes down. There's obviously some situations where that's not going to work, right? Like I never got off the Lev Bell, the team jam him in 2016. I never got off of CMC last year. It was just play CMC every week, 30% plus in tournaments, just play him. We're like, oh, he's got a high percentage and he's got a really high price and price keeps going up. And okay, but so does the production. And he can get you to value on volume without scoring touchdowns. Like there's definitely situations where we can eschew that logic, but a player like Jordan Reed, who only played 27 snaps last week, is not really the guy that I want to eschew that logic for. And I love Jordan Reed. Like I'm not bad-mouthing Jordan Reed in the slightest. Like, I'm a big Jordan Reed fan. I'm happy that he made it out of last week healthy. But, not really where I want to go. Am I taking any shots on Barrios or Hamler? Oh, you're talking UNC. Good. I like it when chat talks to chat. Gallup is that guy. People looking at his box score. Exactly. See, Cripple's got it figured out. You smart. Find the guys who have disappointed people through 2 weeks where their price and their percentage in tournaments is going to go down. And find that guy in, as we showed, the highest totaled game of the week in a matchup against a team that's allowed more receptions to opposing wide receivers than anybody else in the league. And more deep passes completed than any other team in the league to wide receivers. You want your leverage guy? There's your leverage guy. Will it work out 100% of the time? No. But you want to be on the right side of the tournament plays? There's your good tournament play right there. In an offense expected to score greater than 27 points in the fastest paced game, or one of the fastest paced games expected on the week, I made a tweet yesterday. And it's so ridiculous. I thought it was maybe my best tweet of the season so far. I'm going to try and find it for you guys while I stall. Here it is. Kermit looking at phone. Mike McCarthy says the Cowboys' plan is not to run the clock on offense to keep Russ Wilson off the field as much as possible. We want to score as fast as we can and as many times as we can. Kermit hugs phone. I love that. I love that philosophy because I don't care who wins this game. I don't. Like, at all. 0% care from me. No F's given. All I care about is, are they going to score a lot of fantasy points? So, I'm in. He's more expensive than Lamb. He is more expensive than Lamb, but from what we're looking at, right? What we're looking at here, that's good for us. If you're going to expect Gallup, if you're trying to get a hold of a guy who can score 25 fantasy points in one game and do, like, Lamb is going to have 4x the number of people on him in a large field tournament than Gallup. So if you want that low percent guy with a really high ceiling, then Gallup theoretically is your guy. You know, it's that simple. And again, he might have 8 points this week, right? He might suck again. But if you're not willing to take those shots in tournaments, then you're never going to be a good DFS player. And if you're the guy who after the week is going to say, Gallup only had like 8 fantasy points, you said he's great, you suck. Then no, allow me to retort, you suck because you don't understand how to win daily fantasy tournaments. You have to take chances. You have to take chances where you're on the right side of the math. And I'm not saying that Gallup is the only guy. I'm saying there are 5 guys on the slate this week like that people aren't going to play because they either don't know the guy's name or he's disappointed them through the first 2 weeks. Guys like Christian Kirk, somebody they don't know like KJ Hamler, or somebody who's disappointed them like Michael Gallup. All in really good situations where the volume is secure, the matchup is solid, and the ceiling is extremely high. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger. Logan Thomas, same sort of situation. I'm really glad Logan Thomas had 6.6 points last week. He got 9 more targets. Give me a high target tight end every week. Let's say you're absolutely in love with Gallup. Is it too much to force Dak, Gallup, and then another group to pick one of their other 3 pass guys? So you're talking about lineup building rules now, where you're saying you want to say if Dak is in the lineup, then Michael Gallup is in the lineup, and then you're also going to say you're going to build a second group that says select one of, like, Dak is your key, right? No matter what lineup builder you're using, you're going to say Dak is your key. I'm not saying I'm doing this. This is answering a question from Cripple in the chat. You're saying you're going to make a second group that says if Dak is my quarterback, then your pass catcher group. I can do this on the screen without using a lineup builder, because I want this to be clear. What Cripple is saying is he wants every one of his Dak lineups to have Michael Gallup to try and leverage the field in a tournament, which, fine. I'm okay with that. So you have to build that one group. Key group with Dak Prescott, and in that group, exactly one Michael Gallup. Second group you have to build there is if Dak Prescott, exactly one of Cooper, Lamb, Schultz. And it will pick one of these 3 guys to cycle through all of your Prescott lineups, but all of those lineups will also have Gallup in that lineup. So those are the 2 groups that you need to build in a lineup builder for that to be your outcome, I think is what we're getting at here. That's what we're saying. Good. Will Fuller going to be in a few? He's another one. Will Fuller is another one of those guys on that list that I'm just talking, like the Christian Kirk, you know, the guy who has disappointed people, right? And is not going to have as high a crowd on them on the weekend because of recency bias. You want to buy into players that can win you tournaments when people are getting off the train, right? You kind of want to zig when other people zag. And I've explained this with my, I used to coach basketball, for those of you who don't know, for a lot of years, like almost a decade, high school and college basketball. And our zone philosophy on offense to attack, if they're playing zone, this is what we would do. The philosophy is where they vacate, you fill, right? So if I pass the ball from the top of the key over to the free throw line extended on one of the wings, the guard's going to go over there. We're going to pass it back to the top. The second guard is going to guard me in a 2-3 zone because the first guard's over there. We're going to pass it back to the other side. Now the forward has to come up. When that forward comes up to guard the wing, that leaves a big vacated space in the short corner on the left side of the court. One of our forwards, one of our posts, needs to go over and fill that vacated area that the defender just left, because now you're open. Okay? And then we're going to pass to him. Somebody else is going to move. The center's got to come over. Maybe the forward's got to drop back down. That leaves a hole there. Somebody needs to come into that vacated area. Same philosophy for tournaments. As everybody vacates Will Fuller, as everybody vacates Christian Kirk, Michael Gallup, all in great game situations, I want to fill that vacated area. You know? That's it. You're lost now for your early week content without the Edge podcast. Do I have any recommendations for early first look content? Yes. My channel, this YouTube channel, 2 first look videos, one for FanDuel, one for DraftKings, one for cash games, one for tournaments. Also, I'm on the Fantasy Focus podcast every week. Same day of recording. Same Thursday recording day. There's no VOD. The VOD is YouTube. Exclamation point YouTube in the chat, please. And right now, the YouTube crowd is like, what does he mean? I record these live on Twitch. We're not talking enough about Zeke. I mean, we go through this every week, right? It's like last week, everybody was talking about Devontae Adams, and everybody's going to have Devontae Adams. And so the leverage play there to get all those lineups, to get leverage against all those Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams lineups, is play the running back. Zeke can have 25 points any week. Make sure you don't ignore Zeke any week, ever. Gallup, Fuller, Kirk stack, the letdown boys. Man, that sucks. Look, I'm not saying you have to lock button them. I'm saying, like, what percent do you think are going to be on those guys? Like, look at ownership projections for those specific guys, right? So, like, how many people do you think are going to be on Kirk in large field tournaments? I'm going to guess less than 10%, right? Gallup, around or less than 10%, more than likely. KJ Hamler, probably 5% or less of the field is going to be on KJ Hamler. It's not tough to leverage the field and not blow up half of your lineups with those guys. You can have 20% of them and you've already got way more than the field. And if they do have that explosion game, your lineups all the way up. T.Y. Hilton week, his grandma thinks so. 1 lineup out of 3 max. Yeah, that's all you need. If you're doing 3 lineups and you have these guys in 1 lineup and they have a 25-point game, then they go up. Thoughts on Tampa wide receivers with nobody on them this week? I mean, sure. In tournaments, I'm fine with that. You guys have to understand, the majority of chatter is always going to center around cash game plays, right? Players that are cash game viable, because those players have the highest floor as well as have a significantly high ceiling. Dak Prescott last week, really high floor in that game environment and that matchup, extremely high ceiling, as we saw him basically capture all of it with 44 plus DraftKings points. Kyler Murray, really high floor, especially considering the salary, and access to a really high ceiling, captured 90% of that last week. Anything over 30 points is theoretically a ceiling game for a quarterback. 35 plus is absurd. 40 plus is otherworldly. Doesn't happen very often, maybe like 5 times a season. So most of the chatter is going to be around those cash game, high floor, combination, high ceiling plays. And so I always get questions. Nobody's talking about this guy. All right, but isn't that good for you? If you like that player, isn't it better that people aren't playing that guy so that they'll be like less than 5%? And then you could have 15 or 20%. And if what you believe will happen happens, right? If that player has a big day, then you win a lot of money. Last week, that player for me was Mike Evans on Tampa Bay, one of the wide receivers we're talking about right now. Everybody talks about all these other players, but Mike Evans had a really good projection against a really bad defense. So play them. Like, and I mentioned it. It's not like I hid him from you guys. We talked about it. I was like, guys, I think he's a really good play. I even had him in my cash game lineup by the end of the week. Sample okay for cash? I think it's unnecessary. Have I said what I think about Derrick Henry this week? Yep, he's in Best Buys. Go read the article. He's in there. Guys, this is the last bit of YouTube comment that I put out for the week. Every single week. I appreciate you guys being here. Just kind of listening. I appreciate you being here every single week. Drop a like on the video. Again, we're shooting for 10% likes on every YouTube video moving forward. So do your job. It costs you absolutely nothing. Appreciate you guys being here. And I'll see you on Twitch live 45 minutes before lock every Sunday morning. Best of luck. See you then. Bye.
He's a legend.